So I've had the pleasure of knowing you for the past couple of years through the work that you do here. So it's going to be really interesting because we've never actually kind of talked about your sight condition before. It's going to be really interesting to hear more about that. So what actually is your sight condition and kind of how did it come about?
I got cancer. I was diagnosed with retinal blastoma when I was 16 months old.
Wow.
So that's basically just cancer in my retina. And it's quite common, really, when you get that, for it to spread from one eye to the other. Most people that get it either die or lose their sight in both eyes. I was fortunate, I suppose. I lost my sight in my right eye, and this is actually a prosthetic eye. And they tested me sort of for years afterwards, and the cancer hadn't moved. So I still retained eyesight in my left eye, which was perfect until about 8 years old. They noticed I was starting to have trouble reading, sort of near up, reading books and things like that, and seeing my friends in the distance. So they tested my eyes and found that I'd got a type of macular dystrophy, which is called Stargardt's disease, which is a degenerative disorder. My eyesight just degenerates slowly but surely over time. And now I've got into my 30s, my eyesight's quite bad. But it's happened so slowly that really I don't really know any different. I've got sort of used to the way it is now, but it has degenerated quite a lot since I was a child, So.
And what was that like, kind of as a young child? Because I mean, you would have been used to it.
I think at junior school it wasn't a problem at all. I think when it became difficult was going into high school, really. Then because I needed extra support, reading the board was impossible for me. I couldn't read textbooks and things, so I needed an ancillary teacher, a support worker, I suppose to call it, to sit next to me in class. And being a teenager, you don't really want to look different from anyone else, or you want to be the same as everyone else. So I did find that quite sort of emotionally difficult to deal with my disability. It wasn't so much the not seeing the work so much, but I suppose it was the fitting in sort of aspect, the social aspect of it, that I found really difficult to begin with. But in terms of sort of the loss of my sight, slowly but surely, it didn't upset me a lot at the time. It was more how it affected my social life and things like that at the time that bothered me the most.
How did the other kids react to it as well? Did they ask you questions about it? How did that come about?
Some did, but a lot would make comments. I would never. That's the thing. I mean, I would say that I got bullied at school, but it was never. I was never beaten up or anything like that. It would always be done as a comment, and then people would then just laugh off and say, "Oh, it's only a joke, Adrian. Oh, it's only a joke." But of course, I'd laugh it off, but things like that sort of chip away at you slowly over time until it really lowers your confidence. But I mean, I would say most of my friends, most of the people I knew at the time, weren't so interested in knowing the details about it. Like, I'd ask things like, "Why have you got bad eyesight?" Basic questions like that, but not how it's happened and the details about it.
I think when you're young, particularly, people don't necessarily realise that what they say as a joke actually does affect you, because you live with it day to day, and hearing these things as a kind of constant thing, you're not able to then go beyond the condition that you've got.
That's true. And it was a constant thing. There'd be like sort of comments kind of every day. Like if a football whizzed past me or something, like, "Oh, you didn't see that coming, did you?" And then there'd be a laugh, and you think, but it's just little things like that. High school, I wasn't saying. I mean, I came out of it with really good grades, which is a bonus. But it wasn't, an enjoyable time for me. I don't think.
And did it ever stop you from being able to pursue the things that you wanted at that age?
Not really, no. Well, not in terms of like making friends outside of school and education. It didn't. It just. I will be honest. When I left school, I didn't feel like I really had any friends at school that I wanted to still stay in contact with. It was when I went to college. I went to a college for blind and visually impaired people, and when I went there, I made some of the best friends I've ever made, and that was fantastic. And I did well at high school. I got 8 GCSEs. I did academically well at college. So my sight, in that respect, didn't hold me back. I mean, I think we've kind of got to a time now where support for disabled people is a lot better in schools, and technology's got a lot better now. So, so it is, it is possible for someone with disability to, especially visual impairment, to exceed in education and to succeed.
Yeah, which I think is important because it's about having that equal opportunities, isn't it?
Well, it is, and there's no reason. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, when I grew up as a teenager, I had such low self-confidence, and I thought to myself, I'll never get a job. I've come to realise as an adult that's a load of rubbish. If you work hard, you apply yourself, you need to know what sort of equipment's out there to support you. But if you've got all those things in place and you work hard and you're determined, there are lots of jobs and lots of careers you can get into and be successful at. And I think that's something that's great about living in this day and age. Really, is that things are a lot more accessible for people with visual impairments now. I mean, I'm not saying it's not tough. For a lot of people, it is really hard. It took me years to get a job, but there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, and actually this is part of the reason I was really interested in speaking to you about your experience, because I've never, in the time that I've known you, seen you let it get you down or let it stop you from doing things. And I think that's a really amazing thing to be able to see past the condition that you've got, that you've had, for your whole life.
There are times I wish it had stopped me, actually. Like I went up Snowdon, and that was really difficult because I've got hearing impairment as well, and my balance isn't great.
Yeah.
And I've come to realise I put myself in high risk situations, and I probably shouldn't do. But yeah, no, it hasn't stopped me. I've come back from New York recently. I've just done some rollerblading as well, so I do get out and about and do things. But yeah, I have to be careful about the things that I choose. And yeah, no, it hasn't stopped me. I think I'm fortunate. I've got such a good group of friends around me that like doing exciting, interesting things. So they tend to drag me into it. Yeah.
And do you find that you get, because there must be with not being able to see 100% or not being able to even hear 100%, is there like more of a fear when you go into doing new things?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, I would say.
How do you deal with that?
I don't know, ignorance. I think, I don't know, I mean, like Snowdon, that was an experience because it was great getting halfway up, but there are times when you actually have to climb.
Yeah.
And my balance was really terrible, so I struggle to walk in a straight line sometimes if the pavement's not uneven. Yeah. So when it came to clambering up there, I just got on my hands and knees, so it just took a lot longer to do it. But yeah, I was scared, to be honest. I was scared. I'm not great at heights at the best of times.
And that's quite a challenge when you're scared.
It is, yeah. And actually over the weekend, a friend of mine's got a skateboard, and he's really, really good at it. He can jump it and everything and do tricks and everything. He goes, "Oh, Adrian, get on the skateboard." And I think maybe I'm just an idiot. I'll just go, "Okay, cool, I'll do that." So I went on it, and yeah, my balance just wasn't that great. It wasn't my eyesight so much that held me back then. I'd say it's more my balance. But I suppose it's not wanting my disability to hold me back. But I want to experience things in life. I do want to, go on a skateboard, or I don't know. I mean, for instance, climb a mountain, go sailing. I don't see why I should prevent myself from doing these things. But I suppose I just have to do them slower.
Yeah.
Be more careful. But yeah, I suppose, there are times when a friend of mine asked me, we were walking along the beach and there was this huge rock, and he said, "Oh, Adrian, let's climb up that and walk along it." And he was sort of pushing me to sort of do it, and I said, "No." Yeah. And I just drew the line. I said, "Look, if I climb up there, the likelihood is I'm going to fall off it and break my neck." So you just have to make a judgment, really. I'll take risks, but I try not to take too many.
Yeah, it's good to know those boundaries as well, and to be able to push yourself and kind of have the courage to do that, particularly if you're in good company with friends who you can trust. But yeah, to know where the boundaries are, I think that's a really smart thing, and you probably learned that over time, I would imagine.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I mean, we went to New York, for example, to make sure I stuck to my friends like glue, because if I lost them in the middle of a big city, I did think, what am I going to do? Actually, I did lose them at one stage, but I was able to find the hotel. Yeah. But yeah, I do have to rely on my friends. Like if it's sunny outside, and then I walk into, say, like a pub or something like that, where there's not a lot of natural light. Yeah. The change in the lighting for me is really massive. You know, it's stark. You know, I mean, it's almost like walking into a pitch black dark room. But I can hear. The thing is, if I'm walking to a place like that, I can hear people talking around me, glasses clinking and everything, but I can't see anything. So it's quite a worrying situation.
Yeah.
But luckily, a lot of friends I've got are either visually impaired themselves or just are good friends and know about my vision. So in that sort of situation, I might just grab the back of their coat and follow them, sit down, and after about sort of 15 minutes, my eyesight will then. We'll have adjusted by that point, and I can walk around and be more independent. But yeah, there are sort of moments like that which can be a bit tricky.
Yeah. And what's the so for people that don't have any experience with anybody with any kind of sight loss, what are the main difficulties kind of in day to day?
Do you know? I think a problem I have is using a cane.
Yeah.
I should use one. I do have a cane, and I suppose I do occasionally use it, but I think maybe it just goes back to school really. I suppose I'm not comfortable making public declarations of my disability, but
which is common with any disability.
Well, it is, but the thing is, I fall to myself though, because the thing is you know, I would get more help from people, more help from the public. You know, when it comes to if I'm walking down a busy corridor or something like that, people would move out of my way if I used a cane. And also, you know, there are times if I'm in an unfamiliar environment when I can trip over curbs that I don't expect and things like that. If I used a cane, and it would help me with that. But at the same time, I struggle to feel comfortable using it. But it's something I'm always trying to work on. But I found most people, the vast majority of people on the whole, are very kind. And you know, I mean, now if anyone asks, I have no problem with anyone asking me questions about it. If anyone wants to ask me, oh, you know, what's wrong with your eyesight? How much can you see? I mean, you get the same questions again and again. Yeah. But if someone's curious, and I'm happy to answer their questions, you know.
I think as well with anything like this, it's the awareness, isn't it? It's just having people aware that actually, because looking at you now, I don't really notice anything. You know, I wouldn't know that you have a prosthetic eye in one side. I didn't know that before. So to actually be aware that it's an invisible thing, and many people go through it, but just being able to ask questions and being more aware of who's around you, I think it's really important for everybody.
Yeah, it's true. I think that's another reason why I should use a cane, really, because, you know, like you said, if you just take a cursory look at me walking down the road, I just look like someone that's, you know, not a non-disabled person. But then if I bump into you, it would irritate you, because you might be like, well, why can't you see where you're going? But if I had my cane, then it would explain things a bit better. So, but that's something I'm working on.
Yeah. Is that like a constant thing as well? Because is it something that still, even though you've had it your whole life, is it still something you have to work on daily? The kind of confidence, the kind of acceptance of it?
I suppose, yeah. I suppose. Well, I don't know. Mostly not really. I mean, I don't know. I'm happy with who I am, but say like for the last 10 years, my eyesight feels like it's got a lot worse. Yeah. You know, and I'd never felt like I was a total. Where there would be times in my life where I wouldn't be able to see anything. Yeah. I always felt like I had enough useful vision to kind of get by. You know, even if the sun was in my face, I could see enough to cross that road. But in the last 10 years, it really, you know, there are lots of times where I've been able to see, and like I say, walk into, say, like a bar or a restaurant, and I literally can't see anything. Yeah. You know, if my friends walked off from me, I'd be stuck in the middle of this restaurant.
How does that feel?
Terrifying. It's worrying. It did actually happen in New York. Actually, my friends did sort of walk off a bit, and I just carried on walking forwards, and I bumped into a chair, and I could hear someone talk like, you know, what are you doing? And, you know, sort of questioning, and I just carried on walking forwards, and luckily I sort of caught up with my friends. Later, when my eyes got used to the light, I realised I just walked down like this corridor bit that was next to a bar, but I was completely oblivious to that at the time. So, but they didn't realise I was struggling so much, and it was quite noisy in there. So when I said, you know, shouted my friend's name, well, not shouted, but sort of mentioned my friend's name, they didn't hear me. Yeah. So I just blagged it. Basically, I just carried on walking forwards in the hope that I was walking in the right direction. And luckily, I touched the back of my friend's back, and I was like, "Oh, cool! I know where we are." And they were right by a table, so I sat down, and things were okay. But it is worrying, you know. Yeah. But at the same time, though, there are people with eyesight that's worse than mine, or whose eyesight is like that all of the time, and they use a cane and they manage. So I think it's adjusting, because my eyesight has got worse, and a lot of the time I can see. I mean, you'll see me walking around, so it's fine. But there'll be pockets where I can't see anything, and I think that's probably one of the excuses I use for not using a cane, is because I can get around and largely sort of get around okay.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, I don't need it.
It's kind of when you get to the point where you're needing it more and more that you might think, actually, maybe I'll get one.
Yeah. I mean, I've got one, but it doesn't see the light of day that often.
Yeah. And how does it feel, because if it's getting worse, how does it feel knowing that it's getting worse? Because obviously, I mean, you've got a lot more life to live as well. Does it kind of scare you?
Well, it does. But the thing is, I've been told two different things by two different specialists. I mean, one person said that it would get worse, but then I spoke to another specialist that said, well, it's probably got as worse as it's going to get.
Yeah.
So that it's stabilised. I don't know. I don't feel sad about things if it does get worse, because I feel like it's being blind or being registered blind isn't what I thought it would be.
Yeah.
I'm registered blind, but you would assume, I can't see anything, but I can. I can see that there's a window over there. I can see you sat in front of me. I mean, I can't make out your features.
Yeah.
But I can see there's a woman sat in front of me, and I can see you're wearing, light trousers. I do have useful vision, just not much. And so when I was told that I would lose my sight, I just assumed that I would see nothing at all, and that would be it. So, as long as I can still see a sunset, and I can still see a lot of the world, it's just it's detail a lot of the time that I miss out on. So I don't know. I'm okay with it, and I'd like to think that if my eyesight gets any worse, it won't get much worse.
Yeah. What would you say to anyone? Because I'm aware there might be people seeing this that have some sort of condition that maybe are on the kind of might just be losing it and might be at a kind of an earlier stage of dealing with it. From your experience now of like living with it day to day, what would you say to those people?
I would say to those people not to worry. That there is hope, as as difficult as it is. I mean, that's the thing. I don't think is if someone's in that sort of place where they're losing their sight and they're depressed about it, they're struggling to hold down their job or whatever. I know it must be really tough to hear this, but there is life after visual impairment. There's no reason why you can't fall in love. There's no reason why you can't have fantastic friends, but you can't have a good job. That you can't do great experience. Why can't do a skydive or even there are even driving experiences for people that have no sight at all. There is good life after visual impairment. So I suppose, but I can imagine how difficult it would be to have a completely sighted life and then lose it. I suppose because it's happened to me from a young age, I don't really know any different.
Yeah.
So and it's been a gradual sort of decline. So this is kind of who I am. But I suppose I would say just not to give up hope, and though your life will be different, it's going to change. That doesn't mean it's going to change into something worse. Yeah. I know people with visual impairments that live far fuller lives than a lot of able-bodied people I know. So it's how do you judge happiness? How do you judge life fulfillment? So yeah, I suppose. I mean, that's why I would say to someone losing a sight. Just because you're losing a sight, it's not the end of your life.
Yeah. That's a lovely way to look at things, actually, because it's very easy, I think, with any kind of disability to see a kind of a divide between kind of able-bodied and disabled. Even the word disabled, it kind of separates you from able people. But actually to see that there is...
Sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It is. And especially when you're in the process of trying to deal with it already, to have to then come to terms with the fact that someone,
you've lost
by that word, sees you as less than. That's a really hard thing to deal with.
It's like starting on a negative, but I think that, I've heard so many stories, and I wish I had one I could tell you now. But I've heard of stories of people who have become disabled, and it's to open doors for them. Like they might have started a charity or something on the back of the disability they've received, and that's been their new focus in life, and it's opened so many more doors for them. You know, their life's gone in so much more of a different and positive direction.
Yeah.
So it's not the end. You know, it's like I said, I mean, I understand how the trauma can be difficult to get over with, but we have to adjust, don't we?
Yeah.
As people. But you're right, in society, the disability, it's yeah.